morning. How are y'all? Actually, all y'all. That's the plural of y'all. We'll have our lesson up in a second. We're getting close. For those of you who's visiting this morning, we're in Nehemiah. There we go. And where we've been so far is starting to rebuild the wall, moving along building the wall. Chapter 6 has more plots. Remember in chapter 4 we had some plots that they had, some intimidations they used in order to stop the building of the wall back in Jerusalem. Well, they continue, get a little bit more pointed as far as the way they're trying to stop the building of the wall. Let's jump into it. Verse 1 and 2. And when it was reported to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, and to the rest of our enemies, that I had rebuilt the wall and that no breach remained in it, although at that time I had not set up the doors and the gates. Then Sanballat and Geshem sent a message to me saying, Come, let us meet together at Cherahim in the plain of Ono. But they were planning to harm me. So who's recalling this? What happened? Who's writing this, speaking? Nehemiah. Okay, well, the walls were complete, but what was left to do? All the gates. A bunch of gates, right? Whole bunch of gates. What were the gates made out of? Wood, okay? Probably cedars or something like that, but it's probably cedars considering the region and like that. So heavy cedar doors is that they had to hang on there. And they were big enough to ride through, so they're probably pretty good size. What do you think they meant to do to Nehemiah when they got him out there in the plain of Ono? It's almost a pun. Oh no, what are they going to do to me? Possibly kill him? Maybe just capture him and hold him for hostage? Maybe just throw him in jail? What do you think the reasoning why was to do that? Just Nehemiah. Why do you think Nehemiah was their key? He was the driver behind it, sort of. There was someone behind Nehemiah that was driving him. God. But they figured that if they got Nehemiah, we could stop the whole project where it's at. Just to remind you where the three of them are, you've got Sanballat to the north, Tobiah to the east, and Geshem down to the south. Jerusalem's right there. Ono is right there. So it's about 37 miles away. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to suck him away from Jerusalem and get him up there in an area where he's pretty much isolated from any of the Jews where they're at right now. So that's what their plan is. It's probably kind of obvious to him, but I don't know whether God came to him or gave him a sense of it and like that, but he knows this isn't on the up and up. They don't mean anything good to happen to me for this little planned meeting they want to have, this council they want to have. Do they ever say what the meeting is about? Let's have a council together. No, they never say what they're going to talk about. They just say, we need to get together. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should this work stop while I leave it and I come down to you? They sent messages to me 4 times in this manner, and I answered them in the same way. So what's Nehemiah's response? No, I'm busy. No, things will stop. And it probably would. How long did it take him to rebuild just the temple? Was it days, months, years, decades? It's decades. It took them decades to rebuild the temple. And we're gonna look and see how long it took to rebuild the wall, which is a lot more work than the temple. How do you think they knew? Or how do you think he knew? How do you think Nehemiah knew? I alluded to that on the last slide, but they wanted to stop his work, okay? They had a vested interest in having open access to everything and everyone in Jerusalem. You look at where it's located. It's kind of the crossroads between these three empires, kingdoms, areas of control. And so they're used to going through Jerusalem. And now that's going to stop. You can't conduct business in Jerusalem in the open way they've always done it. And you can't take advantage of the people that are in Jerusalem either. Why do you think they said it 4 times? Yeah, they figured, if I ask him, eventually maybe he'll say yes, But either that or they couldn't think of anything else to do at that particular time. Then Sanballat sent a servant to me in the same manner a 5th time with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, "It is reported among the nations." And Gashmu, which is Geshem, it's another name for Geshem, says that you and the Jews are planning to rebel. Therefore, you are rebuilding the wall. And you are to be their king according to these reports. You have appointed prophets to proclaim Jerusalem concerning you. A king is in Judah. And now it will be reported to the king according to these reports. So now let us come take counsel together. So how did they change their tactics from the first 4 times? Yeah, they're making up a pretty good story. The difference is, I think I asked that question. So what's the flaw in their accusation? Or is there one? Is there a flaw? That he be king, that's a flaw. Who sent Nehemiah to go rebuild the wall? The king, Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes sent Nehemiah there. Remember, what was Nehemiah's position in the court? Cupbearer, okay? Pretty close guy to the king, okay? He's the guy that tasted everything before the king took it to make sure it wasn't going to kill the king. So there was pretty close relationship between the two. So their whole thing is saying, hey, you've rebuilt the wall to rebel. It's like, no, Artaxerxes sent him down there to rebuild the wall. So what did the plan reveal about their intent? Somebody said something. I think it was Wanda. I saw her mouth move. No? Yeah, I mean, they're lying, okay? They have no credibility at all, do they? They have just made up a whopper as far as what Nehemiah is doing to threaten him, to get him to go to the plain of Ono so they can do whatever they want to him. Yeah, they're going to make something up, some flimsy charge, so that they can take care of it. And these are governors that are appointed by Artaxerxes, so you can kind of see the conflict there. Then I sent a message to him saying, such things as you are saying have not been done, but you are inventing them in your own mind. For all of them are trying to frighten us, thinking they will become discouraged with the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. So what's his response? No, you made it up. I know you made it up. You know you made it up. But what were they expecting to happen? What did happen when they did the same thing with Xerxes And they did the same thing with Darius. You remember? When they were building the temple, when they were rebuilding the temple, they sent letters off to Xerxes, they sent letters off to Darius, and now we've got Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes. What happened when they did those times with the temple? They stopped. That's why it took decades to get the temple built, because they kept stopping. They kept getting frightened. So what effect did this have on the Jews this time? Huh? They said something. Didn't it strengthen their resolve? I think it had the opposite effect. We're going to finish this. We're going to get it done. What's this reflect about Nehemiah and his faith? No, you're right. Nothing was going to stop him. He knew God was on his side, and he said, I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm not going to worry about these threats. And these were big deal threats, because those three areas, they had their own armies. The Jews didn't have an army.
God's army.
Excuse me?
They had God's army.
They had God's army. They had God, but you looked at it from a physical standpoint, which is the way they've been looking at it for about 100 and something years. They were looking at it to say, this is a real big threat. Nehemiah looked at it differently. Remember how upset Nehemiah got when he said, what do you mean the walls aren't rebuilt? When he got a report back when he was in the summer palace in Susa. So, when I entered the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Metahithel, who was confined at home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you, and they are coming to kill you at night. So what did he do? What did Shemaiah do?
He wanted to protect him.
Sounds like he did. Sounds like he wanted to protect him. What would this be revealing about Nehemiah's faith? We just talked about his faith. What would this reveal about it? It's starting to crumble a little bit. Maybe not as strong as we thought it was. But I said, Nehemiah, should a man like me flee? And could one, such as I, go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. Then I perceived that surely God had not sent him, but he had uttered his prophecy against me, because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. So, how's that reason so contrary to the reason you entered the temple?
Don't enter the temple.
They were trying to trap him.
They're trying to trap him, but who's supposed to go in the temple?
Not Nehemiah.
Not Nehemiah. That's supposed to be the priests, the people offering sacrifice. What do you go to the temple to do?
Worship.
Sacrifice to God. You don't go to hide in his house. So it would have been the wrong thing to do.
Was it not punishable by death?
I'd have to look at that in Deuteronomy and like that. I'm not sure whether it is or not. You remember when one of the kings went into the temple and said, I'm going to offer up? Remember, he was, I believe, struck with leprosy? I think it's what God decides to do. Hey, Gentiles is a different situation. Yeah. How did he see through Shemaiah's plan?
I think he see through all their plans.
He did. And to him, it just didn't, we're going to go hide in the temple? It just doesn't seem right. That's not the right thing to do. The personality Nehemiah had, God chose a perfect guy, because he had faith in God, and he says, I'm not going to run away from anybody or anything, because God's going to protect us. This is something God wants. What does that indicate about his plan, Shemaiah's plan? What does his plan indicate how badly they really needed the wall? See how much they've infiltrated Jewish society because they haven't been able to isolate themselves at all? It kind of shows how much they need to put up some sort of a barrier so they can clean house. You know, if you've got people coming in there and paying people off in order to get what they want done, somebody's always going to want to take a bribe. And that's what was going on. And that's what Nehemiah is trying to stop. That's what God wants to have stop. He wants to have his people turn towards him, not towards these people outside. He was hired for the reason that I might become frightened and act accordingly and sin, so that they might have an evil report in order that they could reproach me. Remember, O my God, Tobiah and Sanballat, according to these works, and also to Noadiah, the prophetess, and the rest of the prophets who were trying to frighten me. So what was really the purpose of getting him to run in the temple and hide?
To me, he's the most politically savvy guy there. This second assault starts off with an open letter. And the only reason, at least if I'm remembering in history, that you ever sent an open letter was so that the courier would read it and tell everybody as he traveled. So this is just politics.
This is very much.
Nehemiah is very politically savvy.
Heavy-handed politics. And if Nehemiah was to do that, what stopped them from building all along? Being frightened. And if you think your leader is scared and hiding away in the temple, what's going to happen to the building? It all stops. Which is what I just said. What does Nehemiah pray for?
He prayed for strength earlier,
Strength earlier, but here's a little bit different.
praying for his enemies.
Remember these people, God. Remember what they tried to do. So the wall was completed in the 25th of the month Elul, in 52 days. When all of our enemies heard of it, and the nations surrounding us saw it, they lost their confidence, for they recognized that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. So how long did it take to finish the wall? From stones being scattered all over the place. 55 days. 52 days, I'm sorry, 52 days. Temple took decades. This took 52 days. There's a difference in the people. And there's a difference, to some extent, in the leader. There may be a difference in what God was pushing at that particular time, what he wanted. Because if God would have wanted the temple to be redone in 52 days, I think it had been done in 52 days. But they were coming out of captivity, and they had to learn how to build their faith back up again, didn't they? Because in Babylonian captivity, they're kind of wondering about God and how God protects them. What's the reaction of the enemies?
God had been behind it.
Yeah, because, they've heard about this God that these Jews have, that all the things that he's done in the past. And God didn't rebuild any of this wall, but God gave them intestinal fortitude and stick-to-itiveness, if you will, to get it done, to get it finished. And that's a pretty big, 52 days to me is astounding. That is so fast to get it done. The reason they lost confidence because they said, that God's a really working God, right? They went to their stone statues and their wood statues and all those other stuff that they had and never really saw the results that you saw with the Jews. What does this say about resisting evil to us? Because that was evil, and he resisted it. It's really a factor of your faith. If you have your faith that this is what God wants you to do, it'll make it where you can get through it. I thought of James when he wrote, "Submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Certainly Satan was pushing pretty hard behind these people who were evil to get done what they wanted. And Nehemiah stood fast. Draw near to God, he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be miserable and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you. So I think there's a message that you have with Nehemiah is standing fast when everybody around you tells you, no, you're wrong. Isn't that the way our society is today? There's some things we hold fast to from God, and everybody in the society is going to look at us and say, hey, you're wrong. You're wrong. God's wrong? Really? Also in those days, many letters went from the nobles to Judah to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Erah, and his son, Jehohanan, had married the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. Moreover, they were speaking about his good deeds in my presence and reported my words to him. Then Tobiah sent letters to frighten me. So this is in Ammon, which is to the east, which is where Tobiah was reigning. Why is this still happening? Why are they still threatening him? And notice it's just Tobiah. It's not Geshem, who's to the south. It's not Sanballat, who's to the north. It's just Tobiah. They want that control. They have a string of control. Letters didn't have any effects, but why was there this big, strong tie? It was a marriage problem. Make note, Shechaniah of Erah. If you go back to look at Ezra, now while Ezra was praying and making confession, weeping and prostrating himself for the house of God, and this is because the temple had been rebuilt, a very large assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him from Israel, for the people wept bitterly. Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, was one of the sons of the Elam, said to Ezra, "We have been unfaithful to our God and have married foreign women from the peoples of the land. Yet now there is hope for Israel in spite of this. Now let us make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives and the children according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those who tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law." So this goes back into where that tie is in, and you can kind of see the thread. But this is a different Shechaniah that was speaking for the people than the Shechaniah that was just in that last chapter in Nehemiah. Only Jonathan, the son of Ashael, and Jehaziah, the son of Tikvah, was opposed to this, with Meshullam and Shabbathai, the Levite, supporting them. So Meshullam, and I underlined that for a reason, is one of those that's conversing in the letters. And he was the one who said, hey, we don't want to get rid of our foreign wives. We don't want to do that. So you can kind of see him playing in there again. This is back into Nehemiah 3:4. Next to them, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, made repairs. And next to him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, the son of Banos. So Meshullam, who's one of the ones that objected before in Ezra, and is one of the ones that's tied in there with these letters, is rebuilding part of the wall. I think I'd want to really check that part of the wall carefully. Again, we're talking about him finishing his part of the wall and carrying on the repairs. So that kind of takes us where we're at is the walls are rebuilt. Nehemiah 7, I'm going to go through this probably pretty quickly, is those who came back from captivity. Now in 7, it has a big, long list, about 45 or 50 verses of this to this person to this person. I'm not going to do that. I'll let you read that on your own. I'm just going to take part of it and talk about it. Now, when the wall was rebuilt, I had set up the doors, and the gatekeepers, and the singers, and the Levites were appointed. Then I put Hanani, my brother, and Hananiah, the commander of the fortress, in charge of Jerusalem, for he was a faithful man and feared God more than many. Then I said to them, do not let the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot. And while we are standing guard, let them shut and bolt the doors. And appoint guards from the inhabitants of Jerusalem, each at his post, and each in front of his own house. Now the city was large and spacious, but the people in it were few, and the houses were not built. So who did he put in charge of security, and why? His brother. Why did he put them in charge?
Because he's faithful.
He was faithful. They're God-fearing men. They were men who were there to serve God. They recognized who God was, and they were not going to necessarily be intimidated or tempted by those that were surrounding, that were looking very much to bribe people in order to get what they wanted. So what kind of environment were they living in? It's almost a wartime environment. Constantly having to man the walls, having to manage who comes in, when they come in. Then my God put in my heart to assemble the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogies. This is the large part of this section that I jumped over. Then I found a book of the genealogy of those who had come up first, in which I found the following record. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away, and who returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his city, who came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, Bilsham, Mispereth, Bigvai, Nehum, and Baanah. So why did he gather all the people together? Do a census is somewhat, but it's a genealogy. Why are they doing a genealogy?
They want to make sure it's the Jews that came in.
Absolutely. They want to make sure they don't have any outsiders in there. They want to make sure you are a Jew. You were a Jew back to the promise before we went into captivity under Nebuchadnezzar. They want to make sure they've got the right group there. Because if you don't have them, you've got people from outside. It's bad enough you've got people who are Jews that are taking bribes, but you need to have the right people there. I underline Zerubbabel. Why is he significant? Why do you think? This is one of those where you went, or I went, you may not go. Let's go to Luke. When he began his ministry, Jesus himself was about 30 years of age. And it goes through and steps through all these names. And it gets all the way back here, right in the middle, is Zerubbabel. It keeps going all the way back to the Son of God. Son of Adam, the Son of God. All the way to the beginning. So right there in that line from Christ back, Zerubbabel's right in the middle. Whose genealogy is this? Mary's or Joseph's? Genealogy was a big deal. This is Mary's. So why would Luke trace Christ's genealogy this way? What was Luke's profession? He was a physician. So from him, how did Mary become pregnant?
Miraculously.
Holy Spirit. So from Luke's perspective, I got to trace the genealogy from Mary. I'm a physician. I know physically what it meant. This is the other one. This is Matthew. I'm not going to read all the way through it, but it talks about the genealogy of Jesus all the way back in Matthew. And it gets down into the break point at the time of the deportation. So he goes back to where things were to the deportation, and that's kind of where he draws the line and distinguishes before and after. And there we are, Zerubbabel. He's in both lines. To me, that was a big deal, that he's in both lines. Both bloodlines are his. Get down to the end of it here. So the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation of Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations. Why did Matthew trace it this way? Because this is Joseph's. The other one was Mary's, this is Joseph's. Why did Matthew do that? The Jews. What was important? Matthew was what? What was Matthew? What was his profession? He was a tax collector, okay? What was his faith before Christ came? He was a Jew. Matthew was a Jew. Luke was a Gentile. Matthew was a Jew. Who did Matthew write the Gospel of Matthew to? What group? The Jews. For the Jews, it was a big deal to trace the man's lineage back. And that's why Matthew traces Joseph's lineage, genealogy all the way back. Back to Nehemiah, in that chapter 7. And you notice we're in verse 66. All the rest of that is all names. The whole assembly together was 42,360, besides their male and female servants, of whom there were 7,337. And they had 245 male and female singers. So how would you characterize the number of those that came back to reestablish Jerusalem? Faithful. I was thinking remnant.
They're fairly small.
It's small. Considering when probably Nebuchadnezzar went down there in Judah and Benjamin, but it's Judah, and took them into captivity, it was probably well over 1 million. 42,000 came back. Now, you know they're scattered through the empire. There's Jews all over the empire because we're studying on Wednesday night about Esther. And Esther was the queen to who? Artaxerxes. Same king. Same time, same period. Their horses were 736. Their mules, 245. Their camels, 435. Their donkeys, 6,720. That's a lot of donkeys. Some from among the heads of the fathers' households gave to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 gold drachmas, 50 basins, 530 priest garments. Some of the heads of the fathers' households gave into the treasury of the work 20,000 gold drachmas and 2,200 silver minas. That which the rest of the people gave was 20,000 gold drachmas and 2,000 silver minas and 67 priest garments. So what kind of animals did they count? Work animals, beasts of burden. They didn't count sheep, they didn't count goats, they didn't count cattle or anything like that. They just counted what we needed to do things. And it also, to me, indicates it probably leaned pretty heavily towards being pretty much raising crops with the kind of animals that they really focused on. So how much did Jewish households give to the treasury? And don't say a lot. You got any idea what this is? Because I didn't. I read drachma and I go, I read mina and I go, I don't know what that means. So I did a little research. Gold drachma is about 0.2 of an ounce of gold. A mina is 15.87 ounces of silver. If you take that, there's a total of 41,000 drachmas if you add up the three that are gold drachmas. And the minas, there's 4,200 of those given. If you look at how many ounces of gold it is, it's a little over 8,000. You look at how many ounces of silver, it's a little over 66,000. I took the latest price for gold and silver on the market, what it would be today, it's a little over $16 million. So it's a pretty good hunk of change that the Jewish households had that they gave to the people in Jerusalem. The 42,000 had 16 million come in to help support them reestablish Jerusalem. And the Jews, I don't think I would consider them to be rich. When you read what's in Esther and how the Jews were living based on what you hear about Mordecai and the fact that Haman set up that he was going to have all the Jews throughout the entire empire killed over one day, it kind of said they were in kind of a backseat role in society where they lived throughout the Persian Empire. So they really did give. They gave pretty deeply in order to support the reestablishment of Jerusalem so that they could worship God. And this is my last slide. Now the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people, interesting, some of the people, the temple servants and all Israel lived in their cities. And when the 7th month came, the sons of Israel were in their cities. They finished the rebuilding in the month of Elul. What month is that, number-wise? Oh, I'm going to be good in my timing. Huh?
The 7th?
Nope, but you're close. 6. I had to look it up. I didn't know it. It's the 6th month. So the next month, after everything is all done, everybody is settled down in society and what they're doing. Oops, that's not 6. So you now have everything stabilized. All the 3 enemies that were threatening them constantly have kind of taken a step back and said, God's pretty powerful, and they got all this done. 55 days, the wall's rebuilt. They've reestablished the temple. Worship is going on in Jerusalem. What did they not have in the temple? What did they not have in the Holy of Holies? Ark of the Covenant. It's gone. Babylon took it away, and who knows what happened to it. But they are worshiping God. They are conducting sacrifices in the temple. So they've got people that are settled into their city. And now they can start to really become that rebuilding group that moves towards the promise. Questions? Comments? We're going to pick up in 8, I believe, next week. And thank you for your attention. Appreciate your time. Sing the